Okay, so we're going to start section 4.4, percentages 2. Complete the below table. Here's the table. These numbers are the ones we're going to find in the example. The other numbers we have. So it says HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, is one of the world's most serious health challenges. There's a global commitment to stopping new infections, ensuring everyone living with HIV has access to HIV treatment. There's approximately 36.9 million people worldwide with AIDS in 2017, and the vast majority of people living with AIDS are in low and middle income countries. These are 3 countries in the continent of Africa. Okay, so the first one is Namibia, and we know the population and we know the number of people living with AIDS. So what we're trying to find out is what percentage of people are living with AIDS. So if you know that we're trying to find a percentage of people living with AIDS in Namibia, see right here. This is straightforward. This is like the last section where you say you had 45 correct out of 50 problems on a math test. What was your percent correct? It's the same question. Now notice this is people living with AIDS, total people. X is people living with AIDS out of 100 total people. AIDS people, AIDS people. Cross multiply and divide, you get 12.1, and that's how that came up there. To find the number of people with AIDS in Bosnia, we need to find 22 per, this is the second one here. We know the total population and we know the percent living with AIDS. So we're trying to find out how many there are. How do we find that number? This one is really straightforward because it's just 22% of this number, 22%, 0.8 of this number. That's how straightforward it is. It's just total population times people with AIDS over total population. If you look at the units, population, people living with AIDS, population, the populations are going to cancel, and you get the number of people living with AIDS, which is 531,970, which is right there. Now this is the third question. This is the one students, they have trouble, they usually have trouble here. You know the number of people living with AIDS, and you know the percent of the population that has AIDS. So we can still create a proportion. This is the first ratio here. 18.8% is a ratio because it means 18.8 over 100. So we have 18.8 over 100 people living with AIDS out of every 100 people. People living with AIDS, what is the total amount of people? Cross multiply and divide, and you get 59 million and then some. A shortcut would be, notice that you could have over here, X equals 11 million times 100 over that. That's the same thing as this here. And you could read this shortcut. You're actually taking the amount of people living with AIDS and dividing it by 18.8 over 100. That turns out to be the same thing as multiplying by 100 over 18.8, which is what we did here. Multiplied by 100 divided by 18.8. There is an algebraic way of thinking about it. Say that 18.8% of the population has AIDS. And that 18.8 over 100 is the same as that decimal. divide by 0.188 both sides, and you get the answer. So this is an algebraic way of looking at it. And this is more of a proportional way of looking at it. So whatever works for you. So this one we're going to do. We're going to find, basically it's the same idea. We're going to find the total amount of people living with AIDS here in France. In Mexico, we're going to find the percent of people living with AIDS in France, the number of people living with AIDS in Mexico, and the population of Russia based on this data. So for France, we're just simply going to have, pause this anytime and think about what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to put it up there. So I'm doing this problem first, France. So there is our proportion, and I wrote in the units sort of there. That many people living with AIDS, that many total. That's equivalent, that's equal to how many people living with AIDS out of 100 people in the population. Part total, part total. Now I'm just going to put up the answer. So after we cross multiply and divide, we get 0.5 out of 100, which is 0.5%, which is a half a person out of every 100. Another way to look at it is 1 person out of every 200. All right, in Mexico, we know the population and we know the percent of people living with AIDS. So from here, we're going to figure it out. I'm going to do this one, erase this one. Think about it. You're already given one ratio here. That's an important thing. So immediately we can put down this. So part to whole equals going to be part to whole again, right? Part to whole equals, is that the whole part? That's what you got to, it's the only thing you got to really recognize here. And it should be clear that that is the whole. So you're going to have some number over 130,750,074. And hopefully by now I'm not going to put down all the cross multiply and divide, but I will put down the answer. And we get 392,277. And that's people living with AIDS. So now we have our last one here on Russia. We don't know the total population. We know what percent has AIDS or is living with AIDS, and we know the number of people with AIDS. So we're going to find this number here. So hopefully we got this ratio here, and we got the second ratio. The question is part to whole, part to whole. That is clearly the part. The whole, we don't know. That's what we're trying to find out. So again, we're going to cross multiply and divide. Part to whole, part to whole. Cross multiply and divide, and we'll get the population of Russia there. And there's the whole population for Russia. 143,964,667. This is not a ratio, it's a number, so you're obviously going to round it. You can't have half a person in the population. You can have these numbers with ratios, decimals, but not with populations. All right, this is what we're going to pick up on the next one.